Singer Christopher Maurice Brown is known for his R&B hits alongside his excellent dancing skills. I would like to think that Chris is this generation's R&B bad boy because trouble seems to follow him wherever he goes. From his multiple run-ins with the law to his questionable behavior at times, Chris grew up in Tappahannock, Virginia with his parents, Joyce and Clinton, and music was an intricate part of his life. He has always viewed Michael Jackson as his inspiration and even taught himself how to sing and dance and basically become the talent that we see today. And his mom also saw this talent and started to look for record deals for Chris. Unfortunately, during this time, his parents did get a divorce and his mom's boyfriend was physically violent towards her, and this really impacted Chris a great deal and would follow him into his adulthood. By the time Chris was 13 years old, he was discovered by Hit Mission Records. They released a demo titled See Sizzle, and eventually Chris would move to New York to pursue his music career. He did meet with Def Jam's former A&R Tina Davis, and she set up a meeting with the former president L.A. Reid. However, Chris did not accept the contract that Def Jam offered him. Instead, he chose to sign with Jive Records because of their successful young artists like Britney Spears, and he would eventually ask Tina Davis to be his manager after she was fired from Def Jam. His first album, titled Chris Brown, was released in 2005 and has gone triple platinum and produced hit single Run It. Run It made Chris Brown the first male since 1995 to have a debut single be #1 on billboards. His second album, Exclusive, was released in 2007 and produced hit single Kiss Kiss. Following his incident with Rihanna in 2009, he released the album Graffiti, which was not a major success because of the public outrage and basically getting blackballed by the industry because he hit our favorite Rihanna. His fourth studio album, Fame, was released in 2011 and Chris earned his Grammy for the best R&B album, and the album produced hits like Look at Me Now and Yay. His other albums, Fortune, X, Royalty, Heartbreak, On a Full Moon, Indigo, and Breezy, have all gone top 5 on billboards. In 2022, his song Under the Influence went viral on TikTok from his 3-year-old album Indigo. He's one of the best-selling music artists. Chris has been in the entertainment industry for over 20 years, and throughout this time, he's used his time wisely by releasing 10 albums, multiple mixtapes, and even displayed his acting skills in movies like Takers and This Christmas. This man is a hard worker, and we do not give him his props enough. But now, let's get into some of his legal drama and relationship woes and why the public constantly gives Chris Brown a side eye. On February the 8th of 2009, Chris and Rihanna were in a Lamborghini and had an argument that quickly escalated to a fight. Chris was eventually charged with a felony and had to complete community service. He received 5 years probation and he had to get domestic violence counseling. Later on in 2012, he was involved in an NYC nightclub brawl with rapper Drake and NBA star Tony Parker. He tested positive for marijuana and the judge gave him a stern warning. He attended a Halloween party that Rihanna was present at as well, so he essentially violated the restraining order from the assault case. There was a lot going on in 2012, needless to say. In 2013, TMZ reported that Chris had punched singer Frank Ocean and threatened to shoot him, but no charges were pressed, and he also was allegedly involved in a hit-and-run incident, and his community service time served was questioned because he was out of the country on some of the dates served. The hit-and-run charges were dropped, and he received another 1,000 hours of community service. In October of the same year, Chris and his bodyguard were both arrested for physically assaulting 2 men and were charged with misdemeanors, and Chris was ordered to stay at least 100 yards away from the victim. Later that year, because you know the year hasn't ran out, he has to get in trouble again. He checked into a rehab facility and was kicked out because of his violent behavior once again, because he allegedly smashed his mother's car window with a rock during a session. That must mean he was very angry, okay? And he was sentenced once again to a 3-month live-in anger management rehab program. In February 2014, Chris was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And in May, he was sentenced to 131 days in jail for violating his probation because he was kicked out of the Malibu treatment facility that the judge ordered him to stay at. Oh child, Chris just can't cut a break. In September of that same year, he pleaded guilty to assault for the fight that involved the two men and was sentenced to time served and spent 2 days in jail. In 2015, his probation was revoked once again for traveling without consent for a performance, and during the performance, there were gunshots fired and 5 people were shot. He was investigated in 2016 after a woman claimed that he beat her and stole her phone during a party, which Chris basically denied flat out. Later on that year, Chris's ex-manager Michael G filed a lawsuit claiming that Chris assaulted him, but later on in 2019 they decided to settle it out of court, which makes me believe that maybe the ex-manager wasn't lying about Chris possibly putting them paws on him basically. Later on in 2016, he was arrested again for suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon after a 9-hour standoff with the police. The woman in his home called 911 and said he threatened her with a gun, but once again, no charges were filed. The following year, Chris allegedly punched a photographer and was arrested in 2018 for felony battery. But in 2019, the charge was dropped due to insufficient evidence. So he got lucky on that one. After the breakup in 2014, years later in 2017, Karrueche Tran was granted a 5-year restraining order against Chris. She stated that Chris texted her violent threats like, "B, I will beat the ish out of you." He also punched her in the stomach and pushed her down the stairs, allegedly. But can we really say allegedly if she has a whole restraining order on this man? I don't know about that one.
About niggas being like stalkers and love with y'all kind of crazy shit and get tired of it. Well, guess what? I'm one of them niggas. If I love you, bitch, ain't nobody gonna have you. I'm gonna make you miserable. I'm gonna chase that nigga out. I'm gonna chase your ass around. And it's done.
In May of 2018, an unidentified woman sued Chris and 2 other men for alleged sexual assault that took place at his home during a party. But in 2020, the lawsuit was dismissed and they settled out of court, which makes me wonder once again what really happened and if this victim took money instead of speaking the truth, and will something come out later on in the future? Who knows? Before the year came to an end, because as we all know, Chris has to get in some type of trouble, he was charged with 2 criminal counts of having a restricted species, a capuchin monkey, without a permit. So he basically had to forfeit his rights to the monkey and pay $35,000 for the monkey's care, but the charges were dropped in exchange for this. Why get an illegal animal, Chris? The world will never know. To kick off 2019, Chris had a complaint filed against him by a woman in Paris. He was detained on aggravated rape and drug charges, but the case was dropped and Chris filed a defamation lawsuit against the woman. In 2021, Chris's housekeeper claimed that his dog attacked her sister, but the housekeeper's sister has not yet undergone any medical examinations related to the injuries, so the trial was pushed back to September of 2023. So we will see the outcome of this one. Later that year in 2021, the police was called again, and this time a woman claimed Chris hit her in the back of the head, but Chris was not at home when the police got there, and the police reported the crime, of course. On January 27th of 2022, an unidentified woman sued Chris Brown for $20 million and claimed that he raped and drugged her on a yacht in Miami in 2020. Why wait 2 years? The world will never know, guys. The case was dismissed in August of 2022 after released text messages show that she still wanted to see see him even after the alleged rape incident. Due to Chris's criminal history as well, he wasn't allowed in a few countries at some point. He wasn't allowed into the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and possibly they've let him enter the countries after, doing his time and all of that, but I'm not quite sure if he's allowed there or not. In 2022, the American Music Awards canceled Chris Brown's performance unexpectedly that was supposed to be a Michael Jackson tribute as well. Chris did not attend the award show, but singer Kelly Rowland came to his defense when the crowd at the AMAs was booing him for winning favorite male R&B artist, which was quite disrespectful if you ask me. Like, what are you booing for? What did Chris ever do to y'all? Chris was also criticized by fans for calling out Robert Glasper, who won Best R&B Album at the 2022 Grammys. He asked the question, who the F is Robert Glasper? Later on apologized to him after public backlash. And to be honest with you guys, I had never heard of Robert prior to this, so I was asking the question, who is Robert as well, but I didn't, put an emphasis on it. But Chris was big salty because at this point in time, it just feels like they don't want to give him another Grammy. And as of 2023, Chris was under attack again by fans because him and singer Chloe Bailey collabed on a song called How Does It Feel? Chris Brown has also been called out for being colorist on multiple occasions.
We were supposed to go and see Chris Brown. We got there was thousands of girls lining up there, like thousands of girls, and they're not getting in. And we were supposed to be on the VIP guest list. I'll give you guys a proof. Don't go to fucking what's it called? Proud name, proud whatever.
They forgot to tell us black girls ain't allowed.
They said no black girls allowed.
They're literally handpicking these
no
white girls.
Black girls allowed. No black girls allowed. What do you guys have to say?
London, you are shagging my life. Yeah? Shag. Chris Brown, what happened to Chris Brown, man?
Chris Brown is not.
That guy Chris Brown, he's always black. It's Chris Brown. What do you mean? If you don't laugh, you will cry.
You cry.
It's not Chris Brown, it's Chris Brown.
Nah.
Upon all the money that
Guys,
Chris Brown has made in
I
this
swear,
concert,
they
I'm
only-
not buying me new jacket, new dress. You pay for all my Uber that I don't take back and forth, back and forth.
Guys, they're only letting white things.
Your body speaks.
I'm not racist, innit? I'm not racist, but
Your body lying with speaks to me.
And I'm a firm believer in if there's smoke, there's certainly fire there, but we are all allowed to have a preference and nobody can stop that, of course. His most recent incident involved throwing a woman's phone into the audience because she was on her phone while he was dancing in front of her. That reaction to me was a bit much, Chris, but I do think people need to learn to live in the moment and not record every single waking moment. He was also recently accused of beating his girlfriend up, and in my opinion, people simply do not like Chris and will probably never forgive him because of their love for Rihanna and because he just keeps getting into trouble. I don't know what it is about Chris. He just attracts trouble wherever he goes, and it does seem that he is a bit off of his rocker, but that might be due to his bipolar disorder. And if that's the case, he needs to make sure that he takes his medication at all times and make sure that he's fully equipped up there, because some things that Chris does, I just side eye him because it's not making any sense. Another reason why the public doesn't really like Chris Brown is that they believe that he panders to black women, dark-skinned women to be exact, to sell his music, but secretly deep down he hates them based on his dating history. And I can't really be mad at them for saying that, but at the same time, he has his preference just like you have your preference, and you just gotta let Chris do him, all right? I don't think that there's anything at this point that Chris could possibly do to get the public on his side, because it's just been 20 years of a downward spiral of just like, it's just so many run-ins. It's kind of hard to keep up. And I just feel like those that love Chris Brown will continue to support him, and those that hate him will continue to hate him regardless of what he does. He just needs to keep making great music, get his emotions in check, take his meds once again, keep his nose clean, literally and figuratively, no shade, allegedly, stay out of trouble, and I just feel like he will be just fine, okay? My last advice to everyone is to pretty much say no to domestic abuse and try to get away as quick as you can, because you need to keep your children away from it. It will definitely affect them in some way, either good or bad, and I just feel like what happened to Chris when he was a child is constantly coming up in his present, and I just feel like, yeah, the guy really has PTSD from the trauma his mom faced and what he had to see as a child. So you guys be careful and just say no to domestic abuse.